Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Sri Baladev ki jai, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari. So today is the glorious appearance day of Sri Baladev, Lord Balarama, who took the position of Lord Krishna's elder brother. And I wanted to share a little bit with you of Balarama's position, his tattva, who he is, what his relationship is to Krishna, and also his wonderful Leela, especially Vrindavan Leela, in which he is complementary to Krishna's pastimes often, and he also has his own special pastimes. So first we'll begin with this little section from the Krishna book, and this is from chapter 2 of the Krishna book, entitled Prayers by the Demigods for Lord Krishna in the Womb, and it precedes the next chapter, which is the birth of Krishna. And Krishna is now explaining to Yogamaya, who is Krishna's internal energy, that he has an assignment for her, and he wants her to draw Ananta Śeṣa, who's within the womb of Devaki, Krishna's mother, to another womb, Rohini, who will actually be known as Balarama's mother. And she's away from this influence of Kamsa in the prison house. So many of you know the story of Krishna's actually appearing in the dungeon of Kamsa, because his parents there, Vasudeva and Devaki, were imprisoned. Kamsa had an omen that he would be killed by the 8th son of Devaki, who's known as Kamsa's sister. It's actually a cousin, but in Vedic culture, cousins, sisters, and brothers, they overlap. And so Kamsa, was an out-and-out demon. As soon as he heard that omen, he wanted to kill Devaki. You know some of the story, which is just horrific. He's driving the chariot to his newly married sister, and this omen comes, and he's ready to kill his sister because her 8th son is scheduled to kill him. So Vasudeva, thinking very quickly, he convinces Kamsa that basically he convinces him on his own best interest. There's not much moral sense there to step in, but he said it's not going to look good, you know, for you to kill your sister on the day of her marriage. This would be bad PR. So you don't have any problem. I promise you that I will deliver all the children that are born from Devaki, and you can do with them what you want. And so Vasudeva was known for his, you know, straight arrow, being a very, very strict follower of Dharma. He never told a lie, and so Kamsa trusted him. He said, well, okay, that's a good deal. And so what happened was, it was quite horrific. Year after year, for the first 6 years, Devaki gave birth to a little child and a little baby, and Kamsa and Vasudeva delivered him to Kamsa, and he dashed him upon a stone and killed him. Now it turns out in the previous life that these were his own sons. I won't tell that story, but eventually she sees those children again. Krishna retrieves them not much later. But so then we get to the 7th child. Now Kamsa is getting more and more nervous because it's getting to be the 8th child. But as far as Kamsa understood, that Devaki had a miscarriage. But here we see the real backstory is that he was drawn to the womb of Rohini by the influence of Yoga Maya, who is Krishna's internal energy, and she can do that. And so he's known as the son of Rohini, but she's actually Krishna's real brother because she's born from Devaki. So then we get to the 8th son. And Kamsa is really, you know, freaking out now because this is you know. So what happens is that Vasudeva, when this child is born, there's a wonderful chapter here, prayers by the demigods for Lord Krishna in the womb, which precedes it. That's this chapter. And Krishna, he tells Yogamaya, his internal energy, and I'll quote here from the 2nd chapter of the Krishna book. By plenary expansion, Ananta Śeṣa is within the womb of Devaki. On account of being forcibly attracted to the womb of Rohini, he will be known as Saṅkarṣaṇa. Saṅkarṣaṇa means totally pulled. Karṣana is actually the root of the name Krishna. Krishna means one who attracts, all attractive. So Saṅkarṣaṇa means he's fully pulled from the womb of Devaki to the womb of Rohini. He will be known as Saṅkarṣaṇa and be the source of all spiritual power. Now this is important for us because it's very pertinent to our spiritual lives, so listen up. Will be the source of all spiritual power, all bala. Bala means strength in Sanskrit, by which one can attain the highest bliss of life, which is called Ramana. So now we have Balarama. Therefore, the plenary portion Ananta will be known after his appearance either as Saṅkarṣaṇa, one who was pulled, or as Balarāma. Now this next paragraph I found very significant, and so this really is why I picked this section. In the Upaniṣads it is stated, nāyam ātmā bala-hīnena labhyaḥ, which means that that one cannot attain the supreme platform, ātmā is it, of self-realization, platform of self-realization, without being sufficiently favored by Balarāma. Bala does not mean physical strength. No one can attain spiritual perfection by physical strength. One must have the spiritual strength which is infused by Balarāma or Saṅkarṣaṇa. Ananta or Śeṣa is the source of the power that sustains all the planets in their different positions. Materially, the sustaining power is known as the law of gravitation. But actually it is a display of the potency of Saṅkarṣaṇa. Balarāma or Saṅkarṣaṇa is the source of spiritual power, or the original spiritual master. Therefore, Lord Nityānanda Prabhu, who is also an incarnation of Balarāma, is the original spiritual master. And the spiritual master is the representative of Balarāma, the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who supplies spiritual strength. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is confirmed that the spiritual master is the manifestation of the mercy of Krishna. So let's just think about this. There's some very important information here. And that is that how can we get the strength, the spiritual strength, to follow the principles and practices of Bhakti Yoga? This is a very rare gathering. There's millions and millions of people in San Diego who their minds, and it doesn't even cross their minds to come and visit the Hare Krishna temple. But by Prabhupada's great effort in establishing the temples, writing the books, nourishing his society to grow, Lord Chaitanya's movement is spread all over the world. And even if you're 1,000 miles from a temple, if you hit the right buttons on your computer or your iPad, you can access the world of Hare Krishna. All the spiritual sounds, the books, everything is available. So, but the temple, the devotees, the process of Krishna consciousness, this is attractive. It's interesting. There's some degree of faith that we all have in Krishna and Balarama and Prabhupada and the whole thing. But how do we acquire the strength to follow strictly the principles so that we can truly advance in devotional service and come to realize these things, to go from the platform of jnana, knowledge, to vijnana, realized experience? And that's by the mercy of the spiritual master, who is a representative of Balarama, and who can be a conduit, or probably called a transparent via medium, or transparent medium, by which the strength of the Lord can be transmitted, and we can actually experience it and get the mercy. So Srila Prabhupada points out here, and it's often pointed out, that Nityānanda Prabhu is Balarama himself, and Lord Chaitanya is of course Krishna. So that brings it up to, only 500 or so years ago. And Nityānanda, being the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he can be as present here today for us as he was back in those days. It's simply a question of accepting the truth of the Shastra and making an effort to follow the injunctions so that we get more and more purified, and we can experience the love of Krishna and the mercy of the Lord and all of the wonderful benefits that we know Krishna consciousness has. So Balarama is the original spiritual master, and we can pray to him today to give us the spiritual strength to overcome our anarthas and to kick out obstacles and progress in devotional service. So that's what I wanted to say. Now there's also important understanding of how Krishna manages this whole universe. When you think about it, if you just read the Bhagavad Gita, you read the Srimad Bhagavatam, and then you look out upon the world and you try to apply that knowledge and to get the vision, you see how are things going on? How is everything working? And any child can see with a little intelligence that it can't be going on by accident. Just think of your own body. Every one of us has a body, and you have a smaller one, a younger one. I used to be your age, right? So, but isn't it miraculous just that we were able to take our next breath? Think about it. All the things that have to go on so nicely in this body, so that you just live your ordinary life and you casually get up and go to work or go to school or do what you have to do. Moment to moment. It's such a miracle. And this whole pandemic experience we've lived through the last few years, you can see how just this tiny little virus can throw such a monkey wrench into not only one person's life, but thousands and millions of people, because it affects the essential function of breathing. So this is a clearly, intuitively. I used to work with Sadaputa when he was in Philadelphia, in Atlanta, and I edited some of his articles for Back to Godhead, and it was just such a wonderful thing. The first thing he wrote actually was proof by what is it called, information theory, how life cannot arise from matter. And basically he's giving the same argument that Srila Prabhupada gave all the time. It's called the argument from design. The argument from design. This is known as that. I think it was Thomas Aquinas who posited that in the Christian theology, And it's the same thing. That there's all of these amazing details. The sun is rising at just the right time. We can have our little apps. Like I use a little Gaudiya calendar app. I highly recommend it. It's free. And you can know just what time the sun is rising, just what time you're supposed to break Ekadashi. All of that is. How is that? Because the sun is rising at just the right time. All the planets are moving. So on a macro level, we can see obviously there's an intelligence behind it. When there's an intelligence, there's a person. But also you can take it down to the macro level. I remember one of the amazing things, I think it's in that Origins magazine that was actually updated by Dravida Karma Prabhu a few years ago. And that there's no, I remember in school, I remember learning, that the simple one-cell organisms, from the simple one-cell organisms all the way up to the elephant and the whale and everything is, the same life energy is working or whatever. But there's no such thing as a simple one-cell organism. Those little simple so-called one-cell organisms are more complicated than New York City. Inconceivable, but it's true. So that intelligence, that consciousness, that is ultimately residing in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. But Krishna is not just a super manager. He's not a super manager. He, like we, because we're little models of him, right? We're Prabhupada famously said, we're plenary, we're particles. Krishna says, "Mamai vangsha jiva loka jiva buddha sanatana," that the living entities in this world are my angsha, just as a drop of water from the ocean has a little bit of salt in the chemicals. The sun ray has a little bit of light and a little bit of heat. So we also have Krishna's qualities in minute degree. So one of those qualities, who can deny it, is that we want to enjoy. We have the enjoying principle, isn't it? Obviously. No one likes to suffer. So if we have that principle, that means that it's there in perfection, in infinity, in the Supreme Lord. So he doesn't want to just be the supreme manager, worrying about the creation and the destruction and managing everything. So he delegates. He expands. And the first expansion is Balarama. And Balarama then expands into this Saṅkarṣaṇa amongst the Chaturvyuha, the four Vasudeva, Pradyumna, Saṅkarṣaṇa, Aniruddha. And then there's an expansion ultimately into what we call Mahavishnu, or Karana Udaka Vishnu. I know it's a long name, but you can just take Karana Udaka Shahi. Means lying in the ocean, or in the causal ocean. This is outside the universe, but it's spiritual. But he's lying, and from that expansion, all the universes emanate from his breathing and from the pores of his body. Who can imagine? And then you can imagine it. Good. He's very good. Yeah, you don't have to imagine. You got the painting. I have it too. Yeah, it's right there also. So this is how they're coming out. Then what happens? Second expansion. This is all coming from Balarama. Balarama, Saṅkarṣaṇa, Mahavishnu. Then, next one? Who knows? Starts with a G. Garbho Dakashai Vishnu. These are all oceans. Udaka means ocean. The Garbha ocean. Why? Garbha means fetus, actually. Because what happens is you have these expanding globes, but there's nothing going on in there. There's all of the elements are there, Mahatattva is there, but nothing is manifesting. So there needs to be the living force to come in and make it happen. So the next expansion is also Mahavishnu. This is all Balarama expanding. And he's lying, sleeping. They're all lying in this Garbha ocean. Now, how did that ocean take place? Because he was expanded, but there's nowhere to lie. So from his body exuded a lot of perspiration, filled up half the universe. And there's many, many, many universes. And he's lying there sleeping. And then what happens next? How did the next manifestation happen? There has to be an engineer. From the lotus navel, and who sits on the late navel, on the lotus? What's his name? Brahma. Thank you.
From the belly button.
Yeah. Well, the lotus grows from the belly button, and then on that lotus, Brahma appears. He manifests.
Okay.
He doesn't know what's what. Where did he come from? It's all dark, So he tries to be a scientist. He says, all I have to work with is this lotus and the stem. So he goes down the stem, looking for his origin. But he can't find it, even though the end of that stem is Garbhodakṣiva, he can't find it. So he goes back on the lotus and he figures, I better just meditate and see what happens. So then he gets some instruction from Krishna. Who knows what he hears?
Tapa.
Yeah, 3 times. Tapa, tapa, tapa. Now if we heard that, would we know what to do? I don't know what to do. But he was so smart. He's got 4 heads. And he's so smart. He said, I got to perform austerity. You see? So he starts meditating. And eventually he's initiated within the heart by Krishna with the Gayatri mantra and knowledge. And so he becomes the repository of all the Vedas, all the Vedic knowledge, you see? And so then his big task, his big task that he has to do is populate the universe. Because all of us, all of the souls, we're in bodies, but at the time of the annihilation, there's the huge amount of fire and flood and everybody dies. What happens to us? Well, you don't die. Nijayate mriyate. The living entity doesn't die, but all the bodies, we merge into the body of Mahavishnu for millions and millions of years. Suspended animation. And all of our karma, all of our unfulfilled desires are there in the subtle form, in our subtle body, but we're unconscious. At the time of creation again, then these living entities, they gradually manifest, and Lord Brahma, he as his offspring that creates from his mind. It's described in the second, third canto of Bhagavatam. But the point is that Balarama is immediately involved in it through his expansions as Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and the third one is Chirodakashaya Vishnu. Within the universe, there's a spiritual planet, Dhruva Loka, the pole star, and on that planet there's an ocean of milk, Chira, concentrated milk, right? And there, Chirodakshaya Vishnu is lying, and he's expanding in every atom and in every heart as a super soul, Paramatma. So this is all Balarama's expansion. And Krishna, he doesn't have to worry about it. He's enjoying in Goloka Vrindavan. That's the whole idea. Delegate, see? But when Krishna comes, every day of Brahma, which is over 8 billion years, he comes to the Bhoma Vrindavan, the Vrindavan on this earth, to enact his most delightful, attractive pastimes and enliven the devotees. Enliven the devotees by that, and so that and kill the demons and speak the Bhagavad Gita and do everything that he does. So when he comes, then he brings Balarama also manifests there, and other of his intimate associates, the gopis, the cowherd boys, and everything. He has all of them with him. But Krishna's purpose is to not only enjoy those pastimes, but to invite us, the fallen conditioned souls, to rejoin the pastimes. This is our original home. Our original home is not here. We're all aliens here. We can't be happy here. We can try to be happy, but that's the worst thing we can do. If we try to be happy without Krishna on the material platform, then we'll experience what I read last night in the Bhagavad Gita class. By the way, we have a Bhagavad Gita class Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I've been off the class because I've had a problem with my voice, but by the wonderful care of our friendly doctor, Kulan Tantod, he gave me a remedy, and it seems to be working very nicely. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, as long as I'm in town, which is most of the time, at 7:15 we have the Bhagavad Gita class. So last night we read one of the verses that is my favorite in the Śrīmad Bhagavad Gita, and it's very pertinent to this. And he says there, "Yehi saṅsparjaja boga dukkha yonaya evate ādyantamantang koteya nateshu ramite buddha." Not the most famous verse maybe, but it's really important. What he's saying there is that enjoyment that we experience in this world of this contact of the senses with the sense objects, which is the normal way people try to enjoy in this world, that enjoyment, that pleasure, is the very source of your misery. Which is kind of a depressing thought if you don't know from experience that there's another source of enjoyment, real enjoyment. Actually, which is spoken of in the previous verse. He's speaking of the realized soul. Bhaya-sparshesu asaktatma vindityatmani yat sukham sab-brahma yoga yuktatma sukham akshayam ashnute. Now, sukham akshayam means unbroken happiness. You don't have that kind of material happiness. Material happiness is very temporary because it depends on the senses. The senses have their limits, right? And time. But here he's saying, Bhaya-sparshu asaktatma, that the realized souls, they don't try for this happiness of the senses contacting the sense object, material happiness. Because vindityatmani yat sukham, they're enjoying the pleasure within. Isn't it wonderful to understand that Krishna's in our heart, in every one of our heart? He's there as the super soul, and we can also see him as Krishna if we are able to develop pure love. Premanjana chudita bhakti vilochanena. Developing the eyes of prema through purification, one can come to the point of seeing and feeling and experiencing Krishna within one's heart at every moment. So you can imagine the kind of happiness that you can experience there. It's not dependent on the sense gratification. This is the real lasting, ever expanding bliss that we hear about. It's not a myth. It's not just a story. And Srila Prabhupada showed it by his own life and experience, and introduced us to a whole panoply of acharyas and great souls like the 6 Goswamis who experience it at every moment. So we can also experience that, the akshaya mashrute. But it means that we have to learn how to use these very senses that are so attracted to sense gratification in the service of Krishna. Just as, what are the two main things that the Hare Krishna movement is famous for? Chanting Hare Krishna and prasadam, right? Prasadam, transcendental, spiritual food, wonderful food that's been offered to Krishna, prepared with devotion, offered with devotion. And when we appreciate it with devotion, it becomes a sacrament. It's not just a sense gratification, it's actually an exchange of love with Krishna. So that's a perfect example of how we can transcendentalize our life by learning how to engage our senses, mind, and intelligence in the service of Krishna. This is yoga, connected them like that. So, but we need the strength to do that because we're conditioned. We're conditioned, meaning that we're habituated to try to engage in sense gratification. That means subtle also. Mental, the mind is known as the sixth sense. So that conditioning is long standing. Many lives we've had that. In different bodies, subhuman bodies, superhuman bodies. It's always been the same thing. But what is it? Where has it gotten us? To this position, where we're faced again with old age, disease, and death, which is not a pleasant prospect. And all of our hopes for happiness, what happens? They're dashed. Material happiness is not the way to go. As Krishna says, that it has a beginning and an end, and the wise don't take their pleasure there. Now in the purport to this verse, I think the previous verse, there's a verse talking about Rama. Is that he says, Ramante yogino anante satyanande chiratmani iti Rama padenasu param brahma badiyate. That the yogis, they enjoy real happiness. Ramante yogino anante, endless happiness. Satyananda, real bliss, not this flickering shadow of happiness, which is called sense gratification. Chidatmani, which is the spiritual happiness. Therefore, the Supreme Brahman is also known as Rama. Rama means enjoyment, spiritual enjoyment, the personification of spiritual enjoyment. Now that includes Balarama and even Krishna. When we chant Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama can also be a name for Krishna. And Krishna means all attractive, and Rama means the endless ocean of bliss, as explained in the Vedanta Sutra. Anandamaya bhyasat. Have you ever heard that one? These are easy to memorize. There's only 4 or 5 syllables. Anandamaya means full of bliss. Bhyasat means, and which we can tell by his activities, and you can understand. So we're also Anandamaya. We're part and parcel of Krishna, just like the sun and the sun ray, right? We have that quality. But because we're minute, we get covered over by ignorance, and we try to manifest that quality in temporary matter, and we're constantly frustrated. But the process of bhakti yoga trains us and purifies our heart and purifies our mind and consciousness so that we can experience again that anandamaya quality. So that we can regain and resume our original nature as eternal service of Krishna, which is really where the source of happiness is. And Balarama is an essential part of that, because he manifests as a spiritual master. Without that living example of devotional service, and someone who we surrender to and are willing to take instruction from, and to mold our lives, then we're at the mercy, not of Krishna and Balarama, but the mercy of our conditioned mind and conditioned senses. And we don't really have a way advance. And that's why every morning, the first thing we do, and those of us who are living in the temple or very nearby the temple, we come and we have Mangal Artik. Mangal means very auspicious. It's very auspicious to get up really early and use those morning hours for spiritual practices. It's most peaceful, and so that's Srila Prabhupada set up this morning program. And what's the first thing we sing? Samsara dava nalalidha loka tranaya karunya ganaganatvam. So what does that mean? It's very important. Samsara dava nalalidha loka. That the people, such as us, within this world, are suffering lidha in a forest fire of samsara. Samsara means birth, old age, disease, and death. Birth, old age, disease, and death. Threefold miseries. So, but the spiritual master is Tranaya, delivering us, the people, those who are receptive to the message from that. Ganaganatvam has the quality of a cloud of mercy raining down the knowledge and the association and everything else. You see? And Praptasya Kalyana Gunarnabhasya is like an ocean of auspicious qualities. So the first emotion, first feeling one should have if you're meditating on this and you're in the fire of devotional service is gratitude, thankful. If you get marooned out there in the ocean and you're floating around in a little, rowboat or something, and a helicopter comes or someone comes and pulls you out, you're going to thank that person, right? Thank you so much. I thought it was a goner, right? So it's exactly like that. The great souls, they feel the compassion. They feel for all the living entities, not just human beings, who are covered by ignorance and suffering in this world because of that ignorance. So they try to give knowledge, and they try to give the means by which one can realize the knowledge. So Balarāma plays a very essential role in that, being the one who gives spiritual power, as I read here. And why do we need that spiritual power? Because, as I said, we're so habituated to the other way. There's a nice section in Bhagavad Gita, so much wonderful passages of Bhagavad Gita, right in the second chapter, where Krishna describes the normal way in which a person becomes attracted to this material world and then covered and suffers. Maybe some of you know this. We'll just run through it real quick, because we've all experienced this. Dhyayato vishayan pungsa sangas teshu bhajayate sangat sanjayate kama krodha vijayate. So let's meditate on those for a while. See if this rings a bell. By meditating on the objects of the senses, one develops attraction for them. Isn't that the whole principle of advertising? They try to get your attention, and so that you become fascinated long enough to get the message, oh, if I buy that, I'll be happy, right? So that's the Sangha. By meditating on the objects of sense, you get attracted to them, right? There's a billion different objects that you may see that you're not attracted to, but there's that one or few that are very attractive. And if you allow yourself to be attracted, then you get Sangha. Then you get more, and that develops into kama, very powerful desire to enjoy. But the more powerful that desire to enjoy is, the more angry you get when it's frustrated. And eventually, you've got to be frustrated, either by time or whatever. So kama krodha vijayate, anger develops. Krodha bhavati sammoha. And by anger, you become completely bewildered. Sometimes you have these crimes of passion, they call them. You know, they got it right. The kama turned into krodha, and then you can be the crime. Oh no, what have I done? I just killed my brother. And Prabhupada tells a story like that. There was a case like that in India, you knew about. There's many cases. So the point is, you're not in your right mind by too much anger. Sanmoha smriti vibrama, then you lose your memory. Just imagine how critical your memory is. You wake up in the morning, and suppose you who am I? What am I doing here? What am I supposed to do? When you wake up, it all comes back to you. Oh, I got to go to work. In other words, your memory is key. That's what separates us from the stones. So, but sammoha smriti brangshad. And if you lose your memory, you lose your intelligence. Smriti brangshad buddhi nasho and buddhi nasha panashiti. And then you're kind of finished. So how to deal with this? The next verse describes the antidote. And we're back again to the spiritual strength. Raga dvesha vimuktaistu vishayanindriyaischaran atmavashai vinayatma prasadam adhigacchati. How to get the prasadam? At this point, probably most of you thinking of the prasadam, right? When is he going to stop haranguing us? Well, we're going to have another kirtan. So here he said, raga dvesha. These are the two. We have attraction and repulsion. But here he says, vimuktaistu. If one can be free from the raga and dvesha, vishayanu, even when the senses are moving amongst the sense objects. In other words, the things that would normally attract us are there in our vision, but we're not attracted. We're free of the raga and the dvesha, the opposite side, the repulsion. Atma vashaya, self-control. How? Vidayatma, kisalam, by following the regulative principles of freedom. Isn't it? It's almost like an oxymoron. Regulative, you mean that's a restraint. How is that free? Because you're getting free from the chains of Maya, and you're getting bound up in attraction to Krishna, which is wholesome. You see, you got to be attracted. So raga, atma vede prasadam adhigacchati. Then one gets the grace of the Lord in all forms, not just the form of food, which is wonderful, but every form. So, and then by that prasadam, by that grace, one can begin to experience spiritual bliss and true peace. How can there be peace without happening? You can't have peace as long as you have your mind is full of these unfulfilled desires, and then the results of those desires, which is suffering. Then you're in an agitated state. But if you have no material desires, and all your desires have been sublimated into spiritual desires, then you can be happy in any condition. And we saw that with Srila Prabhupada. Such austerity he underwent, such difficulties in order to come to America and preach. And then, the movement, there was always some crisis here and there, But he was always in that equipoised state and, blissful, giving us a wonderful example. So, Balarama, we can understand. Prabhupada said you can if you hear the chant Hare Krishna Hare Rama, that Rama can be understood as Balarama today. It can also be understood as Ramchandra. No harm. They're all the absolute personality of Godhead. And especially today, we should pray to Balarama. He's right there on the altar, next to Subhadra, and there's Jagannath. And for the spiritual power to become steady in devotional service and advance in devotional service, and to go home, back to God in this very life. Srila Prabhupada said this is what we should aim for, and he gave us the means to do it. So is there any discussion on these points? It's 7:09. I guess we're going to have a kirtan after it, a little bit of kirtan before the prasadam. Yes, Guru Krishna Prabhu, give him a mic.
I really appreciated you describing how Baladev expands into the Vishnus, the different Vishnus.
Yes.
How is it that the people get it so wrong that Krishna is an avatar of Vishnu?
It may be as simple as the fact that, Vishnu has more hands. Krishna only has 2 hands, so he must be better. I don't know. I mean, has anyone been cured of that and knows the reason why he used to believe that?
Well, sometimes it's like by time lineage, Like Rama appeared first, then Krishna. So they say,
Maharaj has an answer behind you.
Well, because they heard it from their grandmother.
That's it. That's it.
So there's the folklore tradition. Also, the Vedas are vast. And in the Padma Purana and other Puranas, it describes the lineage you described. There's Vishnu, then there's Mahavishnu, Karnadakshay Vishnu, Mahavishnu, Kshirodakshay Vishnu. There's the different Vishnus. And then in that time sequence, Krishna appears on earth later. So just like Guru Krishna was saying, well, they're thinking just in straight linear time in this manifestation. Well, Mahavishnu was first, and then later on Krishna appeared. So he must be the original. But we have from Brahma Samhita, you know, Krishna Sarvana, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha, Another Adi Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. That Krishna is the cause of all causes. And Brahma goes on to give the example from one candle, you can light many other candles. They're all of the same candle power, but there is the original candle. I'm almost done. So in Brahma Samhita, it states that Krishna is the Ishvara Parama. He's the original cause of all causes. But because they've only read part of the Vedas, they haven't heard from a bona fide acharya who understands the totality and the essence of the Vedas. Like if I just went to school and understood algebra, I wouldn't understand advanced physics. Because I only have that portion of knowledge. So you need to hear from a bona fide acharya who understands all the Vedas and the essence of the Vedas. But if you understand the essence, there's many, many quotes that Krishna is the cause of Vishnu, he's the cause of all causes. So they heard it from their grandmother, a simple version.
Thank you. We have one more. Go ahead.
If I could also add, as Maharaji said very nicely, Swamiji said very nicely, Shrutir Bibhinna, Prabhupada quotes really, you know, from Chaitanya Charitamrita also, the Shruti and Smritis, sometimes they have different angles. And so people really get confused. But again, Mahajano Sugatas Pantha, right? That's it. That, you know, you have to really follow the Mahajana. And then it becomes really easier for us to understand. So if you follow Prabhupada, we are fine. Thank you, Prabhupada.
And you know, the thing is, Bhagavad Gita, as it is, Mattak Paratarang Nanyat, Krishna says, you know, there's no truth greater than me. But if you don't get the right commentary from that, they can twist it into some other kind of way, you know. Or Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam, if you accept the Bhagavad Purana as the essence, you know. So we've been given that, and you know, we can become unconfused. In other words, don't just stick with what, you know, Srila Prabhupada's line, and coming down, Lord Chaitanya and the Goswamis, it's all consistent. It's the same message is there, and we can be secure. And one of the things about Gaudiya Vaishnavism is that the paramount point is the rasa. It's the relationship. And Krishna appears, you know, he has that supreme form as a human-like form, a simple form, so he can experience, you know, he can engage in all these rasas with his intimate devotees, and they don't have to be, you know, awed by that, you know, the Vishnu. But it's very relatable, you know, in Goloka Vrindavan and in the ultimate abode, and we should remember that the Upaniṣads say Rasal Vaisa. That Krishna, the Supreme Personality, is mostly concerned with rasa, just as we are. You know, there's all of the technicalities and everything, but then there's the what makes the world go round, right? Love, real love. But of course, we don't know real love until we come to Krishna consciousness. But it's the same idea. Is that Krishna wants to enjoy supremely, but as it turns out, the supreme enjoyment is the loving exchange that he has with his mother and with his friends and with the gopis and that's it. And so that's the supreme manifestation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is in that most accessible and delightful and all attractive form, and that's what we should aim for. And then only by developing that attraction with Krishna can we really get free from the thrall of the material energy. That's the only antidote, supreme antidote for it.
Hare
More
Krishna.
discussion?
Hare Krishna.
Oh,
Dravida
Hare
Prabhu, thank you so much for your wonderful talk. Just on a really kind of mundane level, I was under that notion for a really long time before coming here because of Wikipedia. So that was a while ago, but I'm pretty sure that it might still be that way. So I don't know if anybody...
But can't you edit Wikipedia? Get in there.
I guess you can. So maybe someone more qualified than myself should do so. So that way, not like, you know, so many are confused out there who just Google away.
you know, we've been blessed so much, you know, by this knowledge that Srila Prabhupada worked so hard to give us. And we can see that's really our protection. When you study Srila Prabhupada's books and you understand the conclusion, and you know, that becomes your working knowledge that you live by, then you're protected from all of the craziness. You know, it becomes a real strength and a protection. So that's another thing that Balarāma gives. The spiritual master, he gives knowledge, and that knowledge is the most purifying thing. I just read that in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Hare Krishna. Okay, are we ready?
Thank you. Yes. All right, well,
For the next phase?
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to Shri Balarāma Ji. Shri Balarāma Ji ki jai.